Welcome to episode 5 of our 8-day Star Citizen anniversary special of Around the Verse. Today we are celebrating Consolidated Outland. I'm Sandy Gardner.
And I'm Chris Roberts. So Consolidated Outland is one of our youngest manufacturers in the Star Citizen universe. Started as a passion project by famed industrialist and spacecraft enthusiast Silas Corner. The company released its first ship, the Mustang, as a stylish and affordable alternative to the Aurora or 300 series. For their next ship, Silas refused to play it safe and pushed the designers to innovate just as they had done when conceiving the Mustang. The end result was the Pioneer, a full colonization and outpost manufacturing platform that would allow regular people to establish settlements across the Empire and beyond.
Of course, a big part of setting up a new outpost is first finding some land to build it on. Let's learn about how you can claim your own piece of land and also take a look at the reworked Mustang.
Greetings, citizens, and welcome to a unique edition of the brand new Ship Shape. We provide the latest news on ships coming to Star Citizen, interviews with the developers, and today only, as a special treat, a discussion about a new and upcoming game mechanic that has taken the Star Citizen community by storm. I'm your host, Community Content Manager Jared Huckabee. At CitizenCon 2947, we revealed the Consolidated Outland Pioneer, the groundbreaking capital ship that introduced an entirely new game system to the Star Citizen universe, the ability to own and create surface outposts. To start us off for today, let's check in with some of the team working to bring this brand new capital ship to life.
The overarching kind of role of the Pioneer is it's there to create colonies essentially. It's like a big flying fortress / factory. With that kind of overarching archetype, should we say, it presented quite a few challenges both on the art front and the design front.
The purpose of the ship is to give players an entirely new gameplay element and to create a very unique experience for the players in terms of where they're going to settle, how that's going to affect the job market within the game, how that's going to affect exploration in general, which is now a lot more exciting than, oh, let's just fly to a planet and see what's there. Now you actually could do something on those planets, which is amazing.
Take loads of inspiration from real life. You have to, as the old saying goes, like everything in life is a remix. So you really kind of start with real world reference because it gives you the most tangible approach to start from. So in the case of the Pioneer, it was we were looking for more the actual function of it, a lot of kind of car production lines and really kind of manufacturing processing lines and really kind of getting under the skin of how they work, you know, where do the products to manufacture arrive, how are they processed, how does that manufacturing take place, and then, you know, at the end result, you've got this essentially an outpost that's kind of ready to rock. So yeah, it's quite interesting and challenging, to be honest.
The key features is, of course, basically the whole outpost part of it. We didn't design the ship to be a ship per se. We designed it to be a floating factory in space. So everything in and around the ship is just geared towards production and building outposts and claiming your settlement.
My personal favourite thing about the Pioneer was essentially it created two subset of challenges. Number one, we've got this big floating factory. We didn't really want to make a pretty ship per se. It needed to feel kind of quite aggressive, weighty and heavy. So hence you got this kind of slab construction to it, which I think is really cool. But the most interesting thing for me was really kind of how it transforms when it basically lands on the planet.
When we decided to do this thing, nobody really knew what the best way of making it work was, because there's a lot of limitations you're walking up against. Like, if we are going to make this floating factory, the footprint of it is going to be massive, which means that the landing spots need to be massive. So we decided to have the ship fold out, because that'll be, at least when it lands, it'll be massive, but when you're maneuvering it, it won't be as massive. Figuring out how the entire ship is going to fold out, and then how all the robot arms are going to disappear into the bodywork, how the production line slides in and folds around the magic box to conserve space. where all the materials go. It was a really unique and massive challenge, daunting sometimes, but definitely fun.
We've got the technical challenges under the hood of like moving vis areas and moving interiors in the ship, which is incredibly challenging. So when we were designing the layout of that, we had to kind of keep all that to a minimum. So even though the whole ship moves, really what's going on under the hood, there's a lot of kind of, should we say, magic tricks to make it look far more alive than it needs to be, if that makes sense. So then when you've landed, you're in this kind of, it is a risky situation that you're in. Like this, number one, you're in a really kind of, should we say, a ship that's probably going to be worth an awful lot to people. You're going to be tanked up on minerals. You're going to be tanked up on everything you need to create what you're doing. And then also, of course, you've got the outposts that you put down, which need then to become another high risk, high reward factor in gameplay. So when myself and Dan were kind of like chatting about it, we were just saying, like, I kind of said, you know, it needs to feel fortified. It needs to be designed in a fashion that you can kind of defend what you're doing, not just from, should we say, airfire. Hence, you've got the upward facing turrets when you're down on the ground, but also from ambushes on foot. So if you study the layout of the ship when it's on the ground, it kind of feels a little bit like a prison yard. You've got these kind of outlook posts with visibility over the whole ship. The captain's bridge and where the architect is can overlook that whole process, and they still have 100% visibility over the landscape that they're planting on, right? So that was an incredibly challenging but really fun thing to work on. And it kind of, once you get those first ideas in, the rest kind of grows itself, right? So that's really kind of a sign of, I personally think it's a sign of really good game development. It's all very well sitting in a room and coming up with all these ideas and saying it's going to be X, Y, and Z. What generally happens in the most successful titles that you see is that they'll have an idea, something will come through, maybe unexpected, which is the case of the Pioneer, and you just build on those positives. And that was the case with the Pioneer. We had an idea, and it grew and grew and grew to what we have now that went out into the sale. And it's a really cool, and it's something that we've never done before. It's something I don't think anybody's done before. It's really a command and conquer flying factory, but in FPS, which is crazy, but it's awesome.
The creation of the outpost is actually quite simple. When we got to it, we basically decided that since this ship is going to land and give the player such a unique experience, we wanted to feel as kind of like a home base, like a command and conquer style base that lands where you plot down, and it has to be laborious. You can't just like land for a second and then just fly off and do your thing again. No, this is an intense process. It costs a lot of money, a lot of resources, and we geared everything towards that. So this ship is not super fast, it's not super agile, and it just does one thing, and that's production. So when it lands, as you guys have probably seen, it folds open, and the two manufacturing sites basically get exposed. It takes resources from the resource base all the way through those two manufacturing lines, kind of like how things get crafted in a car plant. And then it puts them in kind of a magic oven, because we obviously, showing outposts get made is not really efficient in terms of how the engine runs, etc., etc. So we feed the parts into kind of an oven or a construction module that then takes all those parts. So say on the right side of the plant, very clearly you can see a moving line where raw materials get crafted into a door, and that door moves then through a line of production robots that give it color, weld extra little details, extra little bolts on it, attachment points, holes, and then once that door is semi-complete, it moves into the oven, and then in the oven magic takes place, and out comes this outpost, and that then gets placed by autonomous arms in a spot that you designate, basically.
I'm really happy with the way it's turned out. I think I'm really excited to see it in the game. Basically, it's going to have quite a presence when it comes down, not just from a visual perspective, but also all the VFX that are going to kick off, and obviously the sound. You know, when you're doing this procedure, you need to be lit up like a Christmas tree, literally like seen from outer orbit, and then, okay, right, something's going on down there. So it's going to be interesting to see how the community use it.
Now, no surface outpost is complete without some place for it to call home. And that's where the UEE land claim licenses come into play. Thanks to the enormous scale of our planets and moons, there are amazing opportunities for players to stake their claim in the Star Citizen universe. In a very special feature for ShipShape, let's check in with no less than Dave Haddock, Aaron Roberts, and Chris Roberts himself to learn more.
So we've heard a lot about the Pioneer, which obviously we introduced back at CitizenCon. But also one of the things which really interests me, and is actually one of the things that more than interest really excites me about the game mechanics going forward, is what actually comes with the Pioneer, and that's the right to claim land. But that's something we really didn't go into much detail about. So I'm basically now joined with Chris and Dave here.
Hey guys, how you doing?
And we're going to talk a bit about that. So I guess we'll just sort of kick it off a little bit of us. Okay, what exactly is this right to claim?
Well, okay, so when we were designing the Pioneer, well, actually this all sort of came from our original procedural planet tech. So once we started to bring it online, we were like, wow, I mean, look at, because previously it was just going to be one landing location, maybe two landing locations on a world that you couldn't actually walk around. So you would see it from orbit, you would say, oh, can I land? And then we'd sort of have a cinematic that would bring you down there, and then you could walk around a small sort of first-person level of a landing location. But the moment that Marco and all those guys started to bring the tech online, we're like, wow, okay, this is amazing, because we'll be able to have whole world, planets, moons that, you can walk all over and are rendered at, the high level of sort of first person detail that we're going for in Star Citizen. And so at that point, we're like, okay, well, there's a lot of land. And so and then a planet or a moon is going to feel pretty empty if you just have one location that you go and visit on it. So, we've been very focused on things like, okay, well, what other things can we do on the planets? Building out the ecosystems, distributing resources. We really want to push fauna, so there could be dangerous wildlife there, or creatures you could hunt, or would attack you, or gold or minerals, or all sorts of stuff you could find and harvest. Even maybe areas that you could farm and grow crops and sell them off world or whatever. So we want to basically create a lot of gameplay for the huge amount of land that is now available in the game to play. And so that was really one of the genesis of the Pioneer in the first place, was like, we built these outposts to populate the moons and eventually populate other worlds as sort of these kind of small pioneer outposts, so to speak, first footprints on worlds. And just from an art standpoint or a design standpoint, we're building tools to help us populate those, but it's a huge amount of land. So we were thinking, well, one thing that would be very cool is letting players go find a spot of land and build their own outpost, and let the players almost join us in helping build this world. So yes, us designers and artists are building out the major locations and even secondary towns on some of the more populated planets, but wouldn't it be cool if we had some virgin moons or planets and players could go there, and then they could start to set up their own, like their own little homestead, or them and some friends get together and make their little organization base. And so that was the genesis of the Pioneer itself, which was like, okay, we probably want a ship that you could go and you can sort of be a base builder. And then we were thinking, well, like the whole, the gameplay of Star Citizen, besides the various, default tropes of science fiction sort of, space sims, which is trading or space combat, being a mercenary, being a pirate, exploration is one of the biggest things that, I think a huge amount of the community want to do. And, from our standpoint, our goal is, not to sort of go to thousands of different star systems that are just a different random number seeded sort of set of planets that you just sort of see from a distance. It's like, you go down onto the planet and you see it in this beautiful detail that's sort of rendered, we've been saying crisis level or beyond. So really tactile. You can touch the trees, the leaves, the plants. You see the wildlife moving around, all that sort of stuff. So we sort of have that, and the exploration aspect of it is, well, yeah, let players discover it. So it's not so much about how many star systems you can hit, but what about mapping these planets or seeing these planets or going to see, like what would be the location to put your perfect homestead, or, where you're going to build your farm, or, where you're going to settle. And so our focus on exploration is almost more in the sort of more specific, detailed areas. And so we were thinking, well, we really want to take that and this idea of settlement. Yeah, why don't we let players, instead of us, you go to some department, or you basically say, oh, I'll take tract 52 on this moon that you're selling land on, or whatever. We didn't really want that. We wanted to make it active for the player, so the player would go out and essentially scout for where they want to settle and where they want to put their base. And they basically discover it, fly around. It's all gameplay. You do it in game. You don't automatically get a place. You got to find your place, stake your claim to it. And then we also wanted to make sure that we had a system in place, because the concern would be, okay, well, I go build my base and I log off, and some asshole comes and blows up my base when I'm logged off. And so we sort of came up with this idea of this land claim mechanic, and the Department of Planetary
Development Bureau.
Yeah, Planetary Development Bureau. And the idea is, so you could go to a world outside of UEE space. You don't have to have a claim or do anything, and you can build a base or whatever, or hang out there, or mine resources there. But it's completely the Wild West. So some other player can just come in and try to take it from you forcibly. You've built a base, you log off, it could get attacked. So you'd have to worry about defending it all the time. But if you went and had an actual official Planetary Development Bureau recognized claim, so you went to a place, you placed your, what we're calling a sort of land beacon here, and you've placed it on this plot of land, and then you go and file it with the Bureau. They recognize your claim claim, it's filed in the UEE records, and then now in UEE space, you're basically protected by them. So if someone attacks your base or tries to take it from you, essentially they'll be, become an outlaw or a criminal or wanted. So you have the protection of UEA when it has a land claim mechanic. So we thought that would be a really cool way, and so we decided we came up with this sort of gameplay mechanic, and then we said, okay, well, that's how, as a Pioneer owner, you will sort of claim this spot of land and make sure someone's not going to troll it, and then you go, claim it, file it, and then build your base, and that's where it came from.
Right. And so, in terms of the mechanics, so get into a bit more detail. So you go to, I guess, an office somewhere, and then, so what happens then at that point?
Yeah, and also it sort of expands beyond, Pioneer ownership. Like it's just basically an opportunity for anybody to kind of claim it back.
So basically in the, as we get, because we're going to build out this mechanic because we need it for the Pioneers, but the idea would be in the game, you could go to the Bureau and, pay with UEC money to do a claim on, like basically go out and set your place or homestead on a moon or a planet, then you could do it, right? And we're thinking about potentially having one where you'd have a claim and then potentially an option to lease, because having a claim right may be expensive if you're just starting off, but just like everything else, it's like if you're buying a house, sometimes you lease it or sometimes you rent it.
But sorry, just to clear, so the mechanic is you go to the office first.
Yeah.
You basically say, I want a right to claim.
Yeah.
And then once you have that, then you go explore.
Yeah, they issue basically they issue you a certificate and then basically you go out
and a beacon. You get this beacon, so you can put it in. It can record the area that you're
plot.
Claiming. It gets electronically transferred to whatever is some kind of data chip, and then you take the data chip to the office after you've set your claim and give it to them. And if no one else has claimed that same land, it's recorded in your name, and now it's legally yours.
Okay, so what happens if someone else is trying to claim at the same time?
It's a race.
Yes.
It's a great race.
So
that's true. This is why data runners could come in. So if two people decide, oh, this is a perfect spot, it's whoever files it first is going to claim the land. Of course, there's so much land out there that I think there's plenty for everyone, but there probably will be some cases where someone scouted and said, oh, this is a really rich resource mine.
Or a beautiful view.
Or a beautiful view. And by the way, that's what happens that was kind of what happened in the land rush in the Wild West as well. So we kind of wanted to emulate that. That's the whole idea of the Pioneers, sort of emulating that sort of expansion westward and the land rush.
And the sort of physicality of like having to go out and just
making it gameplay, right? So players are actually physically doing this and doing things in the game to achieve things, and even in some cases could be in opposition with each other or whatever.
Right, and so you could go in, you could say buy 10 claim rights in one go. You could throw them all together if you want a lot of land, or you could space them out in different areas, or if you're, I don't know.
I mean, so we haven't considered. We probably wouldn't limit, to you just one like claim license, because we're basically calling these sort of claim licenses, and so you have a license to claim a plot of land, and you could probably buy a few of these in the game. Like, for instance, some people may concern about building their outpost, but some people, like, if you're just a miner, like, one of the reasons why it's not tied necessarily to the Pioneer is, if I'm a miner, I don't really care that much about building myself an outpost. What I care about is I want to secure an area rich in resources. Oh, look, there's great minerals here. And then I want to mine it. Well, of course, if you have a claim to it, you're sort of protected. Otherwise, you can be mining this resource and a bunch of other people can be coming in and trying to take it from you.
Right. And so the claim is for everything above and below ground. Is that
yes,
what you're saying?
Yeah, that's the idea is, I think, we've currently been playing with the idea of two sizes. One's that's sort of 4 by 4 kilometers, which is a plot, and one that's 8 by 8 kilometers, which we call an estate. And if you're a Pioneer owner, you get with the ship the materials to build one outpost and an estate claim license. And then so you have to go and find your place in the game, claim it, register it, and then build your base. But if you're a miner, for instance, you may just be, okay, I want to get a bunch of different plots, and then I look around, I'm scouting on this moon, and there's a really rich mineral seam, and so I'll like claim that, and then that can be mine to harvest. I don't have to worry so much about someone else harvesting, because if it's in UEE space, you'll be protected. It's just like getting a license to mine in today's world. So we wanted to put some structure. And that doesn't mean that you couldn't go outside of UEE space and just mine without a license, and that would be fine too. It's just a bit more risky.
Right, and I guess also if you're looking at land in certain ways, obviously we have stuff like the prospector and so forth, where you want to go and actually find out. Obviously, if you just go and claim some land just because you think there might be minerals, it may not be the wisest thing to do.
So definitely you would in terms of going and scouting your land, like things, ships like the Prospector, some of our more sort of scanning science-based ships like the Aquila, those would be kind of the ships you would go. And if you're looking for rich resources and minerals, you'll be using them to be doing deep scans on the moon or the planets and finding where the resources are. And we're going to, this is actually one of the focuses of going forward into next year, is to try to work very much on sort of things like the mining mechanics and stuff like that, and resource management. And it will be persistent resources. So if you go and find a seam and then you start mining it, at some point you'll probably mine it out and you'll have to move on to another one, and we'll record it persistently for the moons and the planets. But they'll all be distributed. There'll be resources on, most of the celestial bodies. Some will be richer than other ones will be. So our hope is to create a lot of gameplay besides just say someone building his own outpost. They, like I said, they could be mining, or they could say, this would be a good place to farm, different kinds of crops that then I can go and sell to other people for a profit. So we're really trying to use this land and let players choose what they want to do with it, whether they just want to hang out with a base or create a farm or create a mining installation.
I guess you could even, create a refinery, because there's a lot of miners near you, and you can say, hey, if you come to my refinery, I'll charge you a bit more than the usual, but because it's right next to you, you have to transfer.
Longer term, definitely. I'm the first stage, having all the extra bit. I think we're just starting with an outpost, and then there'll be some add-ons like mining kind of nodding donkeys or some hydroponics and stuff, which we have in the outpost now. But yes, definitely we would start to, have more variety of, kind of modular building stuff you can do, like the outpost. And one of them would be, building up more of a little refinery, or building up, your sort of farm. This is the direction we're going to be going for, sort of a bit of a crafting economy, where you can see the resources of this universe and players utilize them in different ways to earn money. So you could earn money being a badass mercenary, but you could also earn money being a great miner or a good farmer.
Yeah, I guess also you could also, like I said, be a mercenary and protect people's bases if it's like
exactly.
That as well,
No, that's what we're looking at. I would say that even in the case of you've got something protected by the UEE, there certainly will be people that want to operate outside the law that may want to come and steal stuff from you. And so I would definitely think that like some of the bigger places or installations would be more sort of organization centric. I could definitely see an organization getting together, sort of building their own little settlement. Different people can log on at different times, and they're basically running their operation. So this is one of the fundamental parts of building that tool set for players, and I'm really quite excited because it has a lot of agency for a player themselves, because we don't know what they're going to do. We don't know where they're going to put stuff. So it can be really cool. It's going to be a combination of what we're putting down as designers and artists and what players are actually creating.
Well, so also, if they move into a system and they populate it, enough, then they're going to bring in more UEE presence. And there's a lot of things where you kind of like bring this sort of stuff, and they may come turns from a border place, to a much more populated level.
Yeah, they shift the direction of the
better. Super excited by it. I mean, I know Marco and Tony are both very, very focused on all this aspect, because it's kind of the model that we're going for, which is we're trying to go really deep. We don't want to go we're not going so wide, but we're trying to go super deep and just allow a lot of opportunity, and then just natural behavior will come out of players interacting with each other and interacting with AI, and all the systems and rule sets that we have will, I think, make a pretty interesting
Cool. And I
universe.
just want to just reinforce to make sure I'm clear on this is because obviously you are talking about with the Pioneers is quite it's quite an expensive ship and so forth and things, but but you literally will be able to, as a player, if you want to, get in your Aurora, go to the office, get your claim, and then just fly anywhere you want to go. And if you're just really interested in getting a beautiful vista over a lovely lake, you can go there, land, and stake your claim and do.
Totally. So I mean, the idea is that it shouldn't be tight. It just happened that we had to come up with the mechanic for the Pioneer, because the Pioneer was going to get build your base, and we had to figure out the mechanic for it. But this mechanic's for everybody, and it shouldn't be exclusive to people with big super capital ships. It should be for anyone. And because you may not actually even want to build a base. Like I was saying, if you're a miner, you may just want to secure some land for you to do mining, or perhaps you build a piece of land and then you hire a person that has a Pioneer to come and build you your place. And again, that's cool, because that's players working with other players, because that's something going forward into next year. We've talked about the service beacon, but the next level with what we're going to do is in 3.0 you have all these missions you can get. But they're all sort of generated by the AI, and some of them are generated by the system based on player actions. But the next level will be player missions where you're like, hey, I'm stuck in space, come rescue me, or I need someone to be my escort. And that's kind of what we're talking about, the service beacon. And again, this would be the same thing. You'd be like, hey, I need someone to build me an outpost on this moon or something like that. So I'm super excited by that.
So of course, once you own it, then you've got a right to sell it.
Yep.
So one of the things I was just sort of thinking about is if a bit of a property developer, you go in, you search out, you find the most amazing location, and you just buy the land, and then someone else comes along and wants that location, and you could flip it for more
or
UEC.
You could go there, you could build it, and then you could flip it for even more. No, totally. So like generally in Star Citizen, the goal is what you think, what happens in the real world, we're sort of doing an approximation of on all levels, and so there shouldn't really be any one specific profession you need to go in. Like there shouldn't be a definition of win in Star Citizen, because win is however you look at it,
relative
right?
term.
I mean, some person's version of winning could be being the best trader. Someone's version of winning could be being a great farmer, or some people just like to putter around and make some money doing cargo runs, or they want to be a badass pirate. I mean, so what we want to do is create the tools like in the real world, where like your definition of whether you're a winner or not is totally up to you. It's some people, I help people. I feel I'm a winner, or I'm the best athlete at this sport. I feel like there isn't any particular one way to go, and we don't want that in Star Citizen either. So it's just creating this really deep sandbox that allows people all these tools to essentially live a virtual life in our universe, and I think that's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, sounds cool to me. I've got no more questions there on this kind of and stuff. I'm just looking forward to that's, like I said, to me that's what I really look forward to, is this mechanic coming online, and we'll be focusing on it. So
yes, I know. I think we're just 3.0 is almost out. But from our plans that we're working on, our big focus, I know that like you and Tony and Todd, Paul, and all the what we're trying to get this coming year and beyond is really focusing on diving down into more of the gameplay and the functionality. So we've got a lot of the bones now in place with what's in 3.0, but really polishing out and adding more gameplay features and functions and more things to do and more ways to interact, more ways to bring your friends into the game, and that's pretty cool.
Cool. Well, thanks everyone, and thanks guys.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. I can't tell you how much the idea of carving out my own little section of the Star Citizen universe on some moon or asteroid and calling it my own excites me. And for those of you who are worried about us, running out of room, did you know that if all 1.9 million current Star Citizens today got a land license, there'd be room enough for them all on a single planet in our universe? And that's with like half the planet to spare. Even the larger estate-sized parcels. That's a big universe. Of course, I've got this fancy ship pipeline, right? Let's go ahead and update on a few more ships before we leave you today. On day one, we highlighted the ships of Anvil Aerospace and talked about the upcoming Terrapin, Carrack, and devastating hurricane. Well, ships suffering an onslaught of damage from those hurricanes, we're gonna need repairs. And when you can't make it all the way back to a Cryastro service station, you're gonna want a repair depot that can come to you. Enter the Anvil Crucible, which is currently waiting to enter the white box phase of ship development. But once it does, it will resume its primary journey through the ship pipeline before making its way into the waiting controls of those pilots looking to make ships right. Or at least follow the ways of the pocket carrier. Pocket carrier, pocket carrier, pocket carrier, pocket carrier. Yeah, I know what you guys like. On day two, we discussed Aegis dynamics, and today I'm prepared to update on two more ships in that lineup. The Aegis Eclipse, the bomber what bombs at midnight, I'm proud to announce is gray box complete and is preparing for its move into final art phase, while the Vanguard variants like the Harbinger and the Sentinel are currently in design review to bring aspects of their original inception in line with today's processes and game systems before they move further along in the pipeline. This design review also applies to the 300 series of ships belonging to Origin, which we discussed on day 4. Now, this is a necessary step back for ships that were concepted or even implemented into the game before our present day advances took place, so that they can now move forward and be all that they can be within the Star Citizen universe. We'll let you know when they begin their journey into white box phase. Finally, coming back to Consolidated Outland, the Mustang, currently being reworked here in the LA studio, is in the gray box modeling stage. Let's see if we can't dig up a little bit of video on that one.
Even though the Mustang was already a cool ship, very sleek, we really wanted to bring it in line with what the Pioneer was doing. And that meant that we had to go back and sort of re-concept the Mustang, bring it in line essentially. It's one of the more unique starter ships essentially. So it's got its shape language is very different than the other ships. And it's a lot sleeker looking than the Aurora or the Reliant, for example. So more recently, now that we've got the Pioneer to work with for Consolidated Outland, we needed to flesh out the manufacturer style guide more. And the requirements for making the Pioneer the type of ship that it is led us to make some decisions about how Consolidated Outland treated its ships that then required us to readdress the Mustang. From a gameplay standpoint, we're not really changing the functionality of the ship. It's still its intended use is already defined. We're just streamlining the way we've achieved that. So one of the main things that we're changing about the ship is that the original had a tunnel sort of in the center that you had to climb up in order to get to the cockpit. And you had to do the same thing in the beta version to get into the habitation area, and it was really cumbersome to do that. It slowed down the gameplay. Really, you just want to get into your ship and be able to fly off, and the Mustang was getting in the way of that. So in the new version, we got rid of the tunnel. Now you climb into the ship like a normal fighter. Just climb up the side, hop in the cockpit, take off. The beta version will allow you to get out of the cockpit and walk from the cockpit back into the habitation area. And you'll still have to get out through the cockpit area. And for the variants, each variant will still be obviously available, except that the way we're functionally building it is a little bit more sensible, where we're essentially building the back half of the ship separately from the front half and swapping those out for the variants. So it makes a little bit more sense. So we have the habitation version, which is the beta. We have the gamma, which is the racer, the alpha, which is the cargo, and the delta, which is the military version of it. There's some really cool stuff about the redesign for this ship. We've decided to move the landing functionality of the ship from the wings into actual landing gear in the body. And the reason why we did that was because previously the landing gears were the wings on the Mustang. And what that meant was that if you got one of your wings blown off, you could no longer land the ship. So for us in this particular case, we wanted for the Mustang to be able to take a little bit of damage, maybe lose the wings, but still actually be able to land a vehicle. Otherwise, you're kind of dead in the water. We still have the weapons mounted on the wing, so losing a wing is detrimental to gameplay, but the core functionality of being able to land and take off is now available for you in the new one.
The skids became a part of the shape language of the ship, which people fell in love with. Those long-tailed wings. So, hey, we're going to throw landing gear on it. Well, do we need the skids anymore? No, we don't from a design standpoint, but it's a favorite feature. Right? It gives it a certain silhouette that people love. So reconcepting it was sort of let's make sure we transfer over some of these designs and some of these aesthetics that people like, and then give it a little more functionality. We've
also set up the wings so that when you land, they actually fold out of the way. They fold upwards out of the way, giving you sort of like this nice V shape to it. It's really cool. And overall, the design of the ship has been made a little bit sleeker. So everything is, the shapes are a little flatter, a little bit more streamlined. So if you look at it, it'll look a little bit faster than the original Mustang did, as well as looking like it's part of the Pioneer family. Now that we've sort of defined Consolidated Outland style, some of the guiding principles of the design is that we want, wherever possible, we want to have sort of big sweeping shapes. And most of them tend to be flat. You don't have a lot of changing shapes or complicated shapes. We'll tend to have a lot of detail in sort of the areas where we transition from one plate to another. In addition to that, because the overall shapes of Consolidated Outland ships tends to be a little simpler in terms of their surface complexity, they have a lot of surface area to use crazy decals, like humongous decals that sort of like spell out the name of a company, and they tend to use bright colors just to like, give it some pop. The other thing that Consolidated Outland tends to do is they'll tend to have asymmetrical ships. The Mustang isn't one of those, but their larger ships tend to be asymmetrical, and they also tend to have little sort of like boom antennas that are sticking out with detail off in the distance, and they'll tend to have that in different directions. Which makes them look very, very different than Aegis or Anvil. Some of their spaceships, and you'll notice this on the Pioneer, it almost looks like it can be a space station, right? It's not your typical spaceship-looking vehicle.
Now, before we let you go, if you haven't already, don't forget to take the Observer test currently up on the RSI website. It's your chance to win one of the brand new bounty hunting ships, the Anvil Hawk. It's no purchase necessary, and all the rules are there on the website for those of you who are interested. For Ship Shape, I'm Jared Huckabee. Back to you, Chris and Sandy.
All Pioneer owners get an estate-sized piece of land, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm actually looking forward to us getting a mechanic in the game where people can go out and search for their land and stake their claim. And I think it's a really cool gameplay mechanic, and well, it'll make the world more interesting, or the universe more interesting.
I just want my piece of land, a small piece of land.
There you go. Yeah. Also, the reworked Mustang is coming along very nicely, so that's cool. In the meantime, visit our website to see the full Consolidated Outland lineup back on sale from now until December 4th, as well as the land licenses, which will be available until December 11th.
And that's it for day 5. Be sure to check out our store to receive 20% off all merchandise until December 4th. And a big thank you to our backers and subscribers for their support in helping to make Star Citizen. You guys are a big part of what makes this project so unique and special.
Yes, definitely. Thank you very much.
Yeah, remember to join our special happy hour coming up this Friday, where you can vote for the next brand new Drake ship going into Star Citizen.
Yeah, it'll be kind of cool to see what people want. Until tomorrow,
we will see you around the verse.
5 pioneers, 4 A90 jumps, 3 tumbrels, 2 hammerheads, and a hawk in a pear tree. you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in the Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.